Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge. I'm Jon Najarian. Pete joins shortly to describe exactly what the Fed will do or not do tomorrow at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. We'll tell you what the odds say and what our odds are on the games this weekend. All that and more on today's Rebel's Edge.
You know, the best part of the parts these guys don't see, all this craziness that goes on, causes me to have a belly laugh, actually. I will say this. That ring is pretty cool, and I never knew it had a little cross inside of it. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, that's right. Cross.
You know, you can do it. I can't. I can't. I got a couple of bull rings, and I can't wear them because I just can't wear rings. So my wedding rings are around my neck, and the bull rings are sitting in a closet somewhere.
God, those rings are huge too. Those rings that they give people for bulls these days. It's cool. Like a weapon.
Yeah.
They're so big. All right. Well, let's dive in. He's Pete Najarian. I'm Jon Najarian. We've got Jared handling all the stuff that you'll see on the screen other than us, which will mean all the graphics and so forth. So, Pete, let's dive right into the macro picture today. And it is, of course, just as we said at the top, well, we've got a cooling job market. Inflation concerns, not really. So I'd say, Pete, that we're looking at about a 90% chance that we're getting a quarter point cut tomorrow. What say you?
Well, I'm going to cheat and say that the CME is saying it's 89 point something. So yeah, I agree with you though, John. And we've been saying this for a while. I mean, just last week I was on Fox Business with Maria Bartiromo. We were going through PPI and all that kind of thing, but they of course just wanted to say, well, what do you think? I said, they're going to cut. It's going to be a quarter point. If they don't, it's going to be one of the biggest disappointments in one hell of a long time. So I'm expecting a quarter point. You're expecting a quarter point. Obviously, the CME group is expecting about a 90% of that is going to be a quarter point. So I would say that that's going to happen. It'll be the third cut this year, and interesting, of course. And then a lot of change is going to happen in 2026. So I think people better be ready for it. The year is going to be a little bit different than this year because I think we're going to see a lot more movement and a lot more decisions that are actually moving, not just pausing.
I agree, Pete. Well, it's one of those days where our futures, I'll go with silver again, just because we've got silver right now up 4.5%. It's a pretty big move. And of course, when you cut interest rates, it does make some of those commodities, precious metals, more in demand. And so silver is today's future for me, Pete.
And silver's dominating, John, dominating gold in terms of that move that they've been both making. It's been a great move, but silver's just continued on and on and on. New highs, new highs, new highs, where we'd seen gold running as well and had a great run. Then it pulled back, and it's trying to catch up, but it's definitely lagging for what we're seeing out of silver. I'm going to just throw it right out there, John. We had some unusual option activity yesterday in the VIX. The VIX is interesting again today. I mean, yesterday at one point, we got to lows that were in the 15s. If you go back to Friday, in the 15s. And here we are now, give or take somewhere between there, 16 to 17. So I'll just say, that range that we've been talking about, I think you could tighten that up a little bit and say, hey, look, it looks to me like the range is 15.5 to 16.5 for the VIX. And it's interesting to see that volatility index as far as unusual options. They were going out in time. So they're not expecting something now or, early part or the latter part of this year itself, which is just a few more weeks. But they went all the way out to February, John. So somebody's looking for something in the early parts of 2026 where we might see some movement that's going to cause that VIX to spike up a little bit.
Well, the VIX may indeed, Pete, but not based on what we're going to see tomorrow.
Right.
But like Pete's already implied, the bond market is certainly not going to be either A, impressed, or B, likely to move much on this move. They probably won't move until 26, and then we might see some somewhat dramatic moves out of bonds, Pete.
Yeah.
The short-term bonds, they've barely been moving, even with each of these cuts that we've had so far this year.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's talk about Home Depot, one of the companies that will certainly be affected by the cut. Why? Well, we've got two stocks on the list that I think would be affected, Pete, and Home Depot is certainly on the list. They reaffirmed guidance, and this is the part that really caught my attention, Pete. The CFO, a guy named Richard McPhail, said, in our accelerated recovery case, we could see sales and earnings per share grow faster in the event of a sharper housing recovery. So in other words, he's seeing a recovery for next year rather than us just sitting around. And I liked that, Pete.
Yeah, absolutely. They also talked about the momentum, John, that they think they need the momentum in the housing to get activity. And certainly, a lot of that momentum starts with, what are these things going to look like as far as the mortgage payments, right? I mean, that's what people are looking at. So increases there potentially. Home Depot did not have a great year this year. I think it's down about close to 10% year to date, something like that, John. So sitting right around 350, 351, something like that today. But they do face some challenges. But there is that possibility that if these things start to move in the right direction, that Home Depot, I think, would be able to have a pretty nice, as he was talking about, whether it's momentum or whatever, and it won't be nearly as challenging as it has been this year, because it has been. And when you look at that 30-year mortgage, you understand exactly why Home Depot and the home improvement side of things has been lagging a little bit.
Well, let's talk about a $58 billion monster, Pete, and it trades for about $3,500 a share. It is AutoZone. So one reason you keep your stock at that kind of a price is that you don't want a lot of people trading it. You want them to own it and just hold it. And it scares off a lot of shorts too, I think, Pete, having a $3,500 stock. But AutoZone fell about 6% because they missed revenue and profit estimates. So I'm kind of surprised it's only down 6%, Pete. The good news was same-store sales were up about 5.5%. This quarter just closed the books right before Thanksgiving, Pete, for them, November 22nd. And they opened a lot of new stores, 39 new stores globally. They've got 6,666 stores. So this is a monster. But like I said, very few of us actively trade it because it's just too damned expensive.
Yeah, and if you just look back over the last couple of years, John, we've seen how many different companies have gone out there and said, hey, we're going to do, the splits. And they're not just doing it one for two or whatever. They're doing some big splits. But these guys, I think, for the reasons you just documented, I think that's exactly what's going on here. And it does keep that away. Otherwise, when you look at what they actually reported, that you could probably expect to see the stock probably down 10, 15, maybe even 20%. But that's not the case because of the size. These aren't traders. These are folks that are in for the long haul. And I think that they see that the future potentially could be there. The same store sales, it was decent. It was up to 5.5%. The only problem with that, John, is they were expecting it to be at 5.9%. So with a lot more inventory that's sitting around, they were talking about almost 14% inventory increase. So that's a bit of something that they're probably not too happy about. The miss of the revenue as well as the profit, not so great, but they're hanging in there, and it's interesting. And I think for the reasons you're saying, this thing probably could have gotten hit pretty hard. It's not getting hit pretty hard because these guys want to hold on to it. So makes for a much more different stock than many of the stocks that are still left these days, where we've seen so many of them where they've gone from a $700 stock to a $100 stock or whatever. Just look at Chipotle and some of these different names out there. A lot of different stocks that have gotten themselves into position for more trading, but this is not one of those.
Well, let's talk about two stocks, Pete, right now that, like Home Depot, are going to be impacted by the cut tomorrow, which we are getting tomorrow. SLM, which, for many of us, we sort of remember it because of student loan, because that's what they do. It's education funding. And they're down almost 17% today, Pete, because at an investor day forum, they revealed slower earnings growth projections and higher expenses. Okay. Not exactly sure where those higher expenses are coming from, but this one is just getting cracked pretty hard today, Pete. And like Home Depot, they're down about 10 or 12% year to date.
Yeah, and this is a pretty big hit that they're taking today. There's no doubt about that. And the analysts are definitely wide awake today because of that, John, and moving around, shifting around now that they've seen some of these numbers. One of them, Compass, they actually went from a buy all the way to a sell, which is very unusual. It's not something that most of these analysts would do, but that's a big jump and a price target of 23. They really are adjusting. They're a little bit obviously disappointed with what the investor day put out there so far. You can't blame them. And you know what? They aren't the only ones. There's others out there that are dropping things as well. But I thought that one really was by far the most clear that they are very disappointed in what's happening right there. And it's again one of these things that's understandable. It's a difficult time, and this was a disappointing investor day. There's no doubt about that, John. So down 17%, I would say that's probably about what it should be getting hit. And the year to date, same thing. It's probably about where it should be. They just aren't able to move the way they need to move, and that's going to be a problem for the student loan.
Well, interest rates obviously affect REITs, real estate investment trusts. They also affect the likes of Toll Brothers. And this is a company, folks, I know many of you are very, very aware of what they do. Yeah, they're a home builder, but they're not like Lennar. They're not like Pulte. They are really just in the luxury market. Most of their homes start at $1 million. And then, some other things go into that final sale between marketing and some of the other parts of it. So their prices that they charge are definitely not in the average home area. So they are impacted by interest rates. They are hoping, I'm sure, that we get lower interest rates so that they can carry the inventory they've got at less cost, as well as bringing in consumers that have been sort of sitting on the outside looking in, Pete, because at 6% or more, even though it's relatively cheap relative to the last 20, 30 years, it's not cheap relative to the last 3 or 4 years when people were getting mortgage rates under 4%. So Toll Brothers trading to the downside, and this one's rather interesting as well, Pete.
Yeah, and they had a tough time with the revenue. It wasn't terrible. The earnings itself were actually okay, and they reported 463. They were looking for 438. So from that standpoint, the earnings weren't that bad. The revenue was not that great. They had some soft demand that was out there because of the fact, like you just pointed out, John. I mean, you look at these mortgage rates and plus 6%. People got spoiled, and you know what? They're waiting to get back there and get spoiled. But until they get there, it makes it a little bit more difficult for these builders. However, they've had some pretty good run this year. I think this one's up. It's not huge, but it's in positive territory. It's up 7% year to date, something like that. So when you look at Toll Brothers and you look at, you could even look at the PE of a 10. You could say, you know what? This is an interesting one, and this goes for the luxury market. So it is different. It's not as affected as what the others out there that the Lennars and so forth that are less expensive. So they missed on Q4. Yep, they had a little bit of a problem with the revenue. I think that the folks that are going out are a little bit more reluctant right now to purchase that. They just want to see these numbers come down a little bit more, and then I think we'll see that demand start to bounce, John. But sales of $3.4 billion, not so bad, with a margin of 27%, not terrible either. But people want a little bit more, and I think that in the coming months they're going to get that.
Yep. Well, he is Mr. Toll anyway, because Toll Brothers, as the name implies, family business, sort of like Pulte. A lot of these home builders, Pete, were family businesses, and I think they are definitely rooting for the new Fed chairman to come in and start chop, 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 cutting interest rates.
Yep.
All right. Well, we know you guys enjoy these videos. We have yet another video today for you guys to enjoy. It's one of Pete's favorite folks, this young guy that's going to talk a little bit about when the Achilles tendon injury took out my favorite, Indiana Jones, or Danny Dimes, whichever way you want to call him. They all of a sudden had to go out shopping for a quarterback, Pete, and it's hard to find them this time of year. Let's take a listen.
If I told you the Colts are so desperate, they're about to sign a grandfather to
I think
play
I'm more
quarterback.
jealous
Daniel
about his
Jones
hair.
tore his Achilles yesterday, and then his backup got injured right after that. And because they traded 2 first-round picks for Sauce Gardner, they cannot afford to miss the playoffs. So what are they going to do? They're bringing in 44-year-old Phillip Rivers. No, this is not a joke. This man's not only 44 years old, he hasn't played since 2020. Oh, and by the way, he's so old, he's also a grandfather now. If you're going to bring him back, why not call all the old guys out of retirement? May as well bring in Eli, Peyton, Tom Brady, Joe Theismann, Terry Bradshaw, put them all out there for a workout. This is just ridiculous. I know they're desperate over there, I get it, but that's exactly why you don't mortgage your future for a non-quarterback. What if I told you the Colts...
That's amazing. That is amazing, John. I can't imagine a guy going, and not being on the field since 2020. I didn't realize that part about it, but it makes sense. I mean, usually you start getting your upper 30s, even quarterbacks, it's time to say see you later, and most of them do. But there's some Aaron Rodgers and so forth that get out there and still sling the ball around or whatever. But holy smokes, I'm amazed that this is likely to happen. I really am. And I'm not sure, John, why they're going for Phillip Rivers necessarily. As there must be some sort of tie-in with the coach or something. I haven't paid that much attention to it because I didn't think it was real. But I'm starting to think that maybe it is real, that they're going to take him out and he hasn't played in 5 years. But that's okay, right?
Well, here's my thinking about it, Pete. So as you know, they have a minimum that players must make in the NFL.
Yeah.
And it's based on your service in the league. So if you're a player with 18 years experience, I'm guessing, Pete, he probably came out when he was 22 or so. So I'm saying he's probably somewhere between 16 and 18 years of experience in the league.
Yep.
The minimum that you have to pay him is $1.255 million.
Wow.
I think that's not bad, of course, but you probably could have found somebody who's played in the last 5 years. You know what I mean? I mean, if you really want Indy to make it into the playoffs deep and maybe even get lucky and do like Carson Wentz did for the Philadelphia Eagles or whatever against New England, I would have gone for some guy who probably would be somewhere between 25 and 30 years old, just, got cut. They got too many quarterbacks like, Cleveland Browns, for instance, when they had 5 or 6 in training camp. Wouldn't you rather have a guy that had 5 or 6 in training camp than a guy who hasn't thrown the ball since 2020?
5 years. Let's be honest. That's kind of crazy. I'm with you, John. I still am just puzzled by the whole thing, but you know what? Maybe they just have some form of comfort that they see that he provides them and they're willing to do that. But yeah, I think the whole thing's crazy as I've seen. All right. I know it's too early for it, which is exactly why we're going to do it, John. Mock drafts. It's already mock draft time for us in the NFL. So here's what I wanted to just do. A top 10. But without actually even trying to pigeon those guys in, because we don't even know where people are going to be lined up, who's going to be the first pick. Well, I think we have a pretty good idea on that. But who gets the first pick and who gets the third and all the rest of it. But just 10 names or something like that. And when I was searching around for some stuff, including Mel Kiper and some of these other characters that are out there, I found out a couple of things that I think there's going to be at least 3 quarterbacks in the top 10. Fernando Mendoza, for sure, from Indiana. Dante Moore up at Oregon. Ty Simpson down at Alabama. I think all 3 of those legitimately should be in that top 10, and at least in the top 3 quarterbacks for sure. Offensive tackle is pretty deep. So, I got that big kid Proctor down there at Alabama, Mayaguai over at Miami. You've got Fano over at Utah, who's a big son of a gun as well. So you've got that. But you know where it's really deep, and teams are doing more and more of this? Edge rushers. Everywhere I looked, I'm like, edge rusher, edge rusher. I mean, it's Reese from Ohio State, Parker from Clemson, Bain from Miami, Falk from Auburn, Bailey from Texas Tech. It is really deep with that, John. And on top of that, Ohio State, as always, all they do is reload there. I mean, I've never seen anything quite like it, John, because Ohio State's got at least 3-4 guys at least that are potentially going to be in that top 10, which is just crazy how good they really are and what great athletes they've got, on all, both sides of the ball and everything else. Absolutely amazing. But who do you think should be – now, let's say you got to have a quarterback, because Tennessee Titans are not going to draft a quarterback. They did it last year, right? But if somebody's there – who is the first quarterback to go? Do you think it's Mendoza? I think it is Mendoza, but I'll tell you what, that Ty Simpson kid at Alabama is pretty damn good too. And Dante Moore's not so bad. So of the 3, who do you like best?
Mendoza.
Yeah.
And I think, Pete, Mendoza goes to the Las Vegas Raiders.
They need it.
And yeah, because they got nobody. Obviously, if they could get up, they would. The Colts would get up there and take him as well, because he's an Indiana kid.
Yeah.
We're talking about Indianapolis Colts. So, but yeah, they're not going to have a shot at him, Pete. So Mendoza, I think that Arvell Reese that you have described already from Ohio State, that kid is a beast. 6'4", that's pro measured 6'4", means he's 6'5", folks. 6'5", 245, wears a single digit, Pete. He wears 8 on his chest. That is a bad man. That is a really bad man. And I would say Ohio State, I don't know who declares early and all that kind of stuff, Pete, but they could easily, in the first round, have like 5 guys taken out of Ohio State. Tate is a beast at wide receiver. Obviously they've got a great O-line. They've got a great defensive line, linebackers. I mean, and by the way, Mendoza, Pete, I saw him on Pat McAfee's show yesterday. And he was great. He really was. And they even had your favorite guy,
Oh, the linebacker? Who doesn't say anything? He just
kind of sat there. He's like,
I have never figured that out.
I love Pat, and I love that kid, the
Yeah.
linebacker from Ohio State. And they were watching the highlight of one of the guys just decleat Mendoza on a clean hit, and he hit him between the shoulder pads and the helmet. I wouldn't call it targeting, but it was damn close. But Mendoza said, it was like the rappers always say, he said to Pat, he said, I got hit so hard I didn't feel it. He said, now I know what those rappers are saying when they say I got shot 3 times and I didn't even feel it. Because he said, the guy hit me so hard I went numb. And
it is amazing.
He didn't say anything about, he said, hey, that's how the game's played. It was a clean hit. He did what he's supposed to do. I do what I'm supposed to do. I had to step out for a play. And I came back in. Had to let my fingers stop tingling.
It's amazing, man, when these big dudes out there that can run like wide receivers, but they're as big as linebackers and they play linebacker. That's always pretty impressive, man. I mean, it's just incredible. All right, John, how about the NFL? I thought it would be kind of fun just to take a real quick look at who's really starting to rise. And I don't know that everybody even acknowledges it yet. I mean, of course, Indianapolis has had this great run this year. And of course, Seattle's had an incredible run this year. And people know about that stuff. And even, previous great teams like Philadelphia, still playing, do all the rest of that stuff. But how about this? the 49ers were given up as like, these guys are terrible. They're not even, in their own, group. They're not doing very well because they've had so many injuries. Well, I'll tell you what, John, they're starting to get healthy. They've won 4 of the last 5. They've got Brock Purdy back. They're starting to look a little bit healthier because they weren't looking very healthy, and that's the reason people were giving up, because they were losing some games early on. But they're 9-4. They're looking pretty damn good. And I got 2 other ones that I'd throw in that category. Jacksonville, I want to embrace them. I don't know that I can, because they still have some difficulties there as far as some of the points from the defensive side versus the offensive side of things. But they've won 5 of the last 6. So have the Chargers. They won 5 of the last 6. Matter of fact, Chargers had a nice win last night up against Philadelphia. So I think
they suck.
It's funny you say that. There's a lot of people who want this guy who's been to Super Bowls, but they want to fire him. Because of some of the decisions that are made during the games and all the rest of it. There are people out there that want to fire him. So you think they suck because of that too? Maybe is it the coach himself or what's bugging you most?
It's injuries and it's bad luck.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I saw the Bears just gashing holes through their defense, Pete, I just figured, okay, well, this is not the same team that we're used to seeing that competes for Super Bowl and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So something happened and they got soft somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Can they get hard enough to make a playoff run? I don't think so, Pete. I don't think they're there this year.
Yeah. You know what? You're right based upon what, like, I watched some of the game last night, not all of it, but some of it. Not impressive. They just don't, blow you away by any stretch. And, quite fair, trying to be fair with Jacksonville, they're playing good football. They're doing some things right. But I'll tell you what, Trevor, who I love, Trevor Lawrence, throws too many interceptions. At some point, that bites you pretty bad. And he's thrown 18 touchdowns. That's great. He's thrown 11 interceptions. That's too many. I mean, you've got to have a much different metric going on there than what it looks like right now. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'd be a little bit fearful of Jacksonville. But you know what? They got to keep their quarterback healthy with the LA Chargers, John, because that poor guy's playing out there with a hand that they were operated on just not too long ago. And he's out there gutting it out and throwing the football around like a madman. They lost their best left tackle as well, because all their tackles keep getting hurt, but Joe Alt. So, they're beat up a little bit too. Not quite as bad as the 49ers were, but it's interesting to see how these teams are kind of shifting around and playing pretty well. And I think with Brock Purdy coming back to the 49ers and being a part of the team again, like he did last week, I think he's the guy who can lead them maybe past Seattle even, now that they're healthy. They got to have McCaffrey. They've got to have Purdy. They've got to have some of the receivers that get hurt, linemen and stuff. But if they're a healthy team, I still think that they're a potential Super Bowl team with the 49ers.
Oh, I agree. Oh, absolutely agree, Pete, because, when you got McCaffrey and that kid is just gold.
Yeah.
So as long as he's healthy, he's more important than Kittle.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to have both of them, Kittle and McCaffrey, on the offense. And the fact that you might have them both back with Purdy and so forth, yeah, I'll say they could make a deep playoff run. And depending how the other teams look and how healthy they are, because the Colts, Daniel Jones' injury came up out of nowhere. That was, like an Aaron Rodgers Achilles tendon snap. And he's a gutsy kid, but you can't play without an Achilles tendon.
Right.
So if anybody else has some problems, maybe hand hitting a helmet or whatever it might be, 49ers could go deep in the playoffs, Pete.
Yeah, who's really the surprise of the year probably? It's got to be Carolina. Not because they're great, because I don't think they're great. But you know what? They were terrible, and they've turned the corner. And, from the quarterback on down, they just look like a different team this year. They're playing better. Are they great? No, they got more points from on their defense than they've scored on their offensive side. That's not a very good sign, but they're winning football games. They've won some football games. And so the Carolina Panthers, I know they're only 7-6. I'm not trying to pretend that they're a Super Bowl team, but let's not forget, this is a team that basically, how many wins did they even have in the last 2 years?
Yeah.
Not very many.
No. And I can't believe how badly, we talked for years, Pete, you and I, about the CJ Stroud and how that was a mistake. But the kid is playing into that role and doing better and better. So I would be happy to see him prove us wrong. But it was still the wrong pick. Of those two QBs available, Alabama's quarterback or Ohio State's quarterback, I think our buddy David Tepper could have made a better decision.
Yeah, he screwed up on that one pretty bad. Suddenly, when you're a billionaire, you think you know everything, including football, which does not really transfer over much for sports.
Yeah. As Pete likes to say, those of you who think you know everything are really aggravating those of us who do.
I say that, do I?
Yeah, he says it all the time, folks. All right. Well, I hope you join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Pete and I will be back. Thanks for joining us today, folks. Check out marketrebellion.com and our upcoming January 29th and 30th trading event down in Miami at the Ritz. So check that out, and we'll tell you more about it tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. See you then.